Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I got a big one here and a bunch of education-related news as well. More evidence of the collapse and far more evidence, I think, of even the unsafe environment and the situational awareness and lack of situational awareness that exists within the entire business, certainly across the nation. Let me mention this first, though, a couple of geopolitical things. Of course, a lot of people are talking about the assassination, quote-unquote, or murder of the CEO of United Healthcare. I'm going to summarize this kind of as quickly as I can. We know that the individual, again, was under investigation by the DOJ for insider trading, along with other things. We know that they were probably going to give up the goose on a number of different individuals, certainly politicians, regarding insider trading on health insurance and a number of other cases. Again, at face value, I would summarize it like this. You had an individual, good or bad, not sure which, paid by somebody, good or bad, not sure which, probably not a good person paying this individual, if in fact they were paid, to then go and kill another bad guy, to then stop said bad guy from exposing other bad people, men and women, of course, across the political spectrum, regardless of political party, for insider trading and names being associated with discussions of insider trading and 1,000 other things. And then in the middle of all of that, all of these other bad individuals get exposed as a result. I mean, in the blink of an eye, Nancy Pelosi's name immediately came up as soon as this person ended up dead. So I'm not crying over this one. It's unfortunate, but at the exact same time, when you run with these companies and you make that amount of money and you engage in illegality, well, live by the gun, die by the gun, both metaphorically and literally. I don't know what else to really say. I just don't, I'm not crying over this one. Really don't care. It just continues to expose numerous crimes and all of the individuals, again, who are associated with it. But again, for somebody to say something like, wow, government would never do that. Government would never communicate with an individual to take out somebody else in the interest of saving government and the people who are in government from being exposed for their illegality. You have to be kidding. Hitmen get hired all of the time. There doesn't seem to be much indication that this is a professional hitman either. I mean, if you're a professional hitman, are you going to partially cover your face and reveal your race? He appears to be a white individual. His hands weren't covered, his face wasn't covered, you could tell he was white. He apparently also, again, had a 9mm with a silencer, and it looked like, at least to me, that the gun jammed. Why else would he grab the rack and rack it back again? Is that what a professional hitman does? I mean, does a professional hitman reveal his race, not cover his hands by wearing gloves, and have a full-blown face mask, even with face paint to potentially cover his skin tone? And then not oil his gun properly? It could be this was just a former employee. It could be it was somebody, again, who's just disgruntled and knows exactly what these health insurance companies have been doing this entire time. Take, for example, Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee and Georgia and a lot of these other places. These health insurance companies and these life insurance companies are not paying out. If you can't find a body of a dead family member who you know is dead and gone, as a result of all of the damage, the flooding, the mudslides, you name it, everything associated with that geoengineered hurricane, if you can't find the body, you can't receive a claim. You can't make a claim to receive the life insurance from said individual. So your claim will be denied. This is happening all over the place. So what happens in the long term of that entire situation? The health insurance wins. The health insurance companies win because they don't have to pay out. Government wins because they don't have anything to do with the health insurance companies. They're a private entity, and well, that's their policy, and that's the way that it goes. And yes, it's unfair, but again, politicians are also the ones that receive the kickbacks in the insider trading. And then, of course, who loses? The American citizen. Both the dead and the alive who are left to pick up the rubble and tangle with these individuals. I mean, we live in America. Do people not believe for a minute that someone would get frustrated with individuals at the very top of a corporate ladder and then find them and then shoot them and kill them? Again, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying this is a thing. This happens. This shouldn't shock anybody. Sometimes people get upset. Sometimes they get frustrated, and sometimes they've had enough. Maybe this individual's lost everything. Who knows? Maybe this individual was paid by other individuals who have lost everything. Again, who's to really say? But yeah, there were a lot of big names that were wrapped up with this particular individual in this particular individual's case. I don't think this makes the case go away. But this is what, again, desperation certainly looks like. It certainly looks like people have a lot to cover up. So I'm just going to kind of leave it there. Again, I find it interesting, but I'm not surprised. And it really didn't take long, again, for numerous individuals online to figure out what was going on, but at the exact same time, does it really deserve too much of a deep dive? Again, he wasn't a good person. I mean, he was being prosecuted against. It could have been that there was a deal in the works behind the scenes where he was going to, again, give up the goose on numerous politicians. But again, the DOJ works for whom exactly? Well, they work for politicians. That's how corrupt it is. Everybody's in each other's pockets. Again, like I said earlier, you live by the gun, you die by the gun. You run with these people and you exchange money and you hide things and then you're getting prosecuted for one reason or another. Again, what did the guy know? What did the guy figure out? Maybe he was a bad guy and then became a good guy. I mean, who's to say? Point is the entire thing is dirty. And all it did was expose more dirty people. So if they actually think that they can clean up their trash in the middle of, broad daylight in the early morning hours of a day by having someone knocked off, or even if it was just your average citizen who had enough, I mean, okay. But all it does is again, it's like a moth to a flame. These lights get turned on, and even the good moths show up to the flame and start doing a little digging and a little exercising as to what's actually taking place. So, yeah, I'm not really concerned one way or another, and I'm not really shocked. That's about all I can say about it. However, there's also this, and this also is a repeating pattern, I think, that we are continuing to see. And it has to do, again, with blackmail cords and blackmail strings being cut from individuals. We know that blackmail is the game. In politics, and in business, and of course in the American K-12 school system and university setting as well. It's all about blackmail. It's all about keeping information on individuals and then keeping that close to the vest, and then when you want somebody gone, you pull their card, and then they're gone. Unless, of course, you cut their blackmail strings, and you cut the strings between them and their blackmailer. This, of course, is probably done a number of different ways. Maybe you pay off the blackmailer for one reason or another. And you say, we want this individual to work with us on the side of a particular issue that we think is good, so we're going to pay you off, and you're no longer their blackmailer, and that's the way that it's going to be. Or you kill the blackmailer. And then all of a sudden, the blackmail goes away. The person is approached by good people. They say, look, we know you were blackmailed. We know you were blackmailed by this individual regarding this issue, and all of that's been removed now. So now you're going to do what we want you to do because this is the way that this works. And we're going to have you do good things. And then we're going to forget what it is that you've done, but we really won't forget. You're just going to continue to do what we want you to do for the side of good because, again, the strings attached to you and your blackmailer are now cut. That entire situation is a situation that was repeated numerous times in Q posts, time and time again. All you have to look up in the Q websites, like Operation Q and QAnon.pub and all of these other ones, is in the search bar, type in strings, type in blackmailers, and look at all of the different posts and read those posts. It lays all of this out. Here's one potential example. This was from Kid Rock Fan Club on Gab, and they said this is huge. Senator Kevin Kramer was a harsh critic of Pete Hegseth. Now, after meeting with him, he says, quote, I see no reason not to support him, unquote. Again, we know that AIPAC runs a lot of these people too, and everybody has a quote-unquote AIPAC handler. As even, of course, Thomas Massey has very famously brought up to the public when he was on Tucker's show. So again, this is a very real thing, but this is also happening, and this is happening right now. And it's happening with a lot of these different moves. Again, we know that Jody Ernst, Senator Jody Ernst, I believe from Iowa, if I'm not mistaken, that she's one of these, again, dirty rhinos who's in that little gang that, always hovers around Mitch McConnell and John Thune and Barrasso and those other losers. I mean, she's your stereotypical comic book bad person. Her hair alone should give people away. I mean, she just has this deep, thick, brown, gray hair. She never changes her look. She always looks the same. She shows up periodically, and she associates with some of the worst people on planet Earth. The way you can get rid of these people too, not just the blackmailed, but the people who dig in, is somebody like Donald Trump comes along and says it's time to get rid of Jodi Ernst. And when that happens, and he makes that public, all you have to do again is just say it's time to primary her. I will support anybody who runs against her. I will support anybody who is America First, Agenda XYZ. We need to get rid of Jodi Ernst. As soon as that happens, all hell breaks loose. Jodi Ernst starts to panic, puts out particular tweets. Her entire blackmailed team puts out particular tweets. Her APAC handlers get involved, and a number of other things start, breaking down that don't work in her favor. And then before you know it, if she decides to run again, which she would, because why wouldn't she? She's a lifer. She has millions of dollars. She would do 1,000 other things if she had a brain, but she's blackmailed, so she's going to stay in these positions. But apparently, again, Jodi Ernst was one of the individuals running point, as the story goes, regarding Pete Hegseth, and communicating with individuals behind the scenes in the left-wing newspapers to, again, try to oust Pete Hegseth. Now, Pete Hegseth has admitted to cheating on his wife when they first got married, apparently. He got married, he got a job at Fox News, all of that happened quickly. He was at this women's conference, apparently. I heard all of this listening to even Megyn Kelly bring this up to him. And it was interesting. I mean, he made a huge mistake. He's a dirtbag. I think that, me personally, I think that people who cheat on other people are some of the lowest humans on the face of the planet. Not to mention, it was his new bride. Now, he didn't have sex with a woman, but he put himself in a terrible situation. And again, this is interesting. It brings up the blackmail avenue, because he apparently had this female handler who was helping him go from point A to point B at this particular conference, when he was, again, set to give a speak at this women's conference. So initially, you would think, if you were military-minded and you knew about the weapons of blackmail, if somebody comes up to you and says, "Hi, my name's so-and-so, I'm going to be your female tour guide for the entire day," you would look at that person and say, "I know where I'm going. I know what time my speech is. I don't need your help. Go away." You would think that's what anybody who was knowledgeable about such situations would do. Not to mention, again, who was that female by name? Were they Mossad? Were they paid to do something with Pete Hegseth in the interest of blackmailing him? I mean, look what's happened years down the line here. Look how all these old cards keep getting pulled from a number of different individuals. So again, if he has a job to do and Donald Trump gives him the job, then he has a job to do. And if he doesn't do it, he gets fired. There were also, of course, numerous rumors that DeSantis was going to take over for Hegseth, and then that, DeSantis could basically make Matt Gaetz the governor of Florida, and all these other speculative stories were making the rounds the other day. And again, it's all designed to basically make Donald Trump look like he's picking bad people. Now, again, what was interesting about one of his picks were, again, the Anons went apeshit, and rightfully so, had to do with his DEA pick. And the guy running the DEA, again, the former sheriff of Hillsborough County. And again, during the whole COVID lie, locking up some pastor for having, again, church service and not wearing the masks and not distancing and playing all those fake games. Well, that individual has been pulled now. They, of course, are claiming, the news media immediately claimed that he withdrew his nomination because, on his own accord, because of the way that he was being attacked online and by other people. And then Donald Trump came out and said, no, he didn't withdraw. I pulled his card for him, and I'm withdrawing him because I was the one who made the nomination. Me, frankly, I could care less who got him out. I'm glad he's out. It was a bad pick from the word go, and it exposed him in the blink of an eye. See, this is the new world we live in. It really is. This is the new anonymous world where we are the news, and we have been the news for a very long time. We were the news before the Q drops. There were endless shows that existed that were exposing a number of different things on a real level with what was really going on in the world, and those existed all over the internet before the Q drops. Whether it, again, was anonymous chat boards or it was other outlets, and then all of a sudden the mainstream outlets like YouTube and Twitter and whatever else, and certainly Facebook and the rest of them, they all instantly started purging these accounts because they were telling the truth. And the truth always gains traction. And then, of course, more people read that and they hear that, and then they look at what the TV news is telling people and they say, wait a minute, this isn't matching up. Why are these individuals over here not talking about these particular things that we're reading about over here in this other avenue and in this other dimension and wavelength of thought? So again, a person's name can be thrown out there for one reason or another, for consideration for this or consideration for that, but the American citizens are on their toes now. We're not on our heels. The bad guys are on their heels. We are on our toes, and we're the ones looking around at this information and then sharing it quite literally in the blink of an eye. And it's unavoidable. So again, this is why the mainstream media can't be trusted, and this is why we're watching the destruction of the old guard. We were told this was going to happen, and it's happening. And it's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. Let me mention this very quickly, too, just as a quick reminder. Alex Jones. I, of course, brought him up in the last episode, and I simply made the reminder to everybody, ask yourself why particular people aren't bringing up particular things. Again, is it because they don't know about it? Maybe. But if they know about a particular thing and all they do is criticize it, why is it that they are doing that? There was a Q post on September 6th of 2018, and it was numbered 2102. Anybody can go look this up. And it was a post within a post, and the first post that's embedded in the larger post said the following. It says, quote, "There is a lot more to this than you realize. Think collective attacks versus Q. They attack, quote unquote, AJ, Alex Jones, to give him fake credibility amongst POTUS supporting patriots, thus positioning the water and directing narrative of the opposition through a MOS supported asset, aka AJ. All team effort, coordinated collective, quote unquote, attacks with pawns and actors serving black hat agendas and attempting to control/divide the patriots. Attacks will come from all sides." And then Q responded and said, "Control and divide. Think Mueller. Who is testifying before Mueller tomorrow? Forensic data analysis on phones and or computers, question mark? This is not about Guccifer 2.0. What happens if Mueller proves Free Speech Systems, LLC, aka InfoWars, is linked to a foreign intel agency or other non-domestic entity? How can the left, quote unquote, use that information to divide and censor the right? Why are affiliates of InfoWars constantly attacking Q? Who is pulling the strings?" And then there's some spaces and it says Free Speech Systems, LLC, Q. Because Free Speech Systems is Alex Jones's company. So again, it's not that there isn't some truth being shared on those platforms. It's just, what do they not say and who do they immediately criticize? They're not just criticizing the Q drops. They're criticizing anybody who reads them and anybody who learns from them because they're told to do so. Because they were outed in these drops as being controlled opposition. Again, it's not that you can't learn something from some of these people and it can't help open your eyes. But there's another dimension to why they're doing what they're doing. Not to mention, as I've said before, Alex Jones has no problem grifting off of the entire Q movement himself by using all of the terminology. He's never even said the words Great Awakening before the Q drops. And then he makes it the title of one of his latest books. It's not an accident. He knows exactly what he's doing. He thinks that the people, again, who followed the Q drops are going to buy that book, which I'm sure many people did. They're going to read it, and then, he's made his money because somebody bought his book. And very quickly, just speaking of books, I know that I mentioned a few episodes back that I was thinking on putting together a book about dysgenics, specifically, again, in the realm of education. I've backed off of that a little bit, even though I still have a great deal of notes on it, and I'm still thinking about it from time to time, but again, I probably just don't have the time, which is a bit unfortunate because I'd like to, but there have been a couple of books that have been written about dysgenics, certainly across the last few years, I'd say. There was one that was written, I believe, a year ago, one that was written back in 2017, although mine would have been more specific, having to do with the education system. But it's easier for me to sort of just describe it here on the show and then write about it, of course, in Substack articles, and sort of take that Rush Limbaugh approach to it rather than actually writing a book about it. So I don't know. That's kind of where I sit on it now. I'll just leave it in limbo. But anyway, that's just kind of my 2 cents on it. Again, it's a very serious topic, but equally as serious, I think, is what people are not discussing, and the number of things that people could be discussing, I think, that are taking place. Again, like the wireless body area network. That's something that I think is at the forefront of what's really going on here that a lot of people are missing. That these wireless environments are remarkably harmful, and the devices, of course, that people are wearing on their bodies are remarkably harmful. So anyway, it's kind of my quick little transition here, but let me mention this as well. This was kind of interesting. Ran across this on X. Just wanted to read this very quickly. This was from a Joe Lang, and here's what they said. They said the following here. They said, "Don't listen to anybody telling you nothing is happening." They said, "Newsflash, Trump was never in any real legal danger. He knew that Soros prosecutors would go after him. He purposefully took the slings and arrows to set future precedent so that past presidents are no longer above the law. Presidents can now be prosecuted for crimes once they've left office. Trump didn't commit a single crime and knew he would never be sentenced. Now for the boomerang. Have you noticed lately that a whole lot of judges are suddenly standing for the Constitution instead of playing politics? What changed? Have you heard of the term enemy combatant? These judges are making a choice to be on the right side of history. Do you want more evidence of that?" And then this is a headline and a quote directly from Zero Hedge where it says, quote, "Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Lewis has been ordered, by a local judge to release all communications between her office, Special Counsel Jack Smith's office, and the January 6th committee regarding her RICO case against President Trump and his allies, after she was found to have violated federal law by withholding them." He went on here and said Fannie Willis was bringing a RICO case against Trump. But now she has to turn over all communications she had with other enemy combatants, quote unquote, that were helping her in a conspiracy to frame Trump. Now she is going to be exposed and will find herself being prosecuted in a RICO case of treason. The perfect boomerang. This has always been going to be the outcome, or this was always going to be the outcome, they said. This is just one sting operation. There are so many more about to be exposed. Greatest military planning in history, unquote. I completely agree. And we were even told of this boomerang effect in Q drops a very long time ago. We were told all of this. We were told this was going to happen. You turn on the lights, all the bugs show up, and then when you turn them off, there's a net underneath all of them that catches them. Certainly, again, we're watching that happen right now. And these people are panicking, and it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. So, like I said in the last episode, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening. There's no doubt about that. Okay, on to education stuff here. Again, I've got a great deal, and this is interesting, jacked up, and optimistic sort of at the exact same time, with also a massive warning here in a later story that I'm going to bring up, because this is a situation, I think, regarding school shootings that people are not considering. Again, not all school shootings are real, which we know, and we've been over on the show in great detail over the last number of years that this show has existed, along with, of course, other shows that have brought it up as well. But most recently here, with Jesse James throwing this story my way again, that Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of Ethan Crumbley in Oxford, Michigan, is appealing her conviction, and her defense lawyers in the firm that is working on her behalf is immediately asking for a full-blown acquittal based on the judgment, and rightfully so. Again, this is a lengthy, I have the entire PDF right here on my computer. It's approximately 679 pages long. Of course, I'm not going to be reading the entire thing. However, they do go through all of the different moves of numerous school officials, what they did and did not do. They also go through, of course, what the prosecution failed to do, what they said they would do that they ended up not doing, and a number of other excellent details of this, I'm certain. What we do know, and as I mentioned at the time of the actual trial when I was covering it here on the show, was that there wasn't a single crime that Jennifer Crumbley nor her husband, James Crumbley, actually committed in the entire situation. Not one. Again, just at the very beginning of this brief, it says the following. It says, on February 6th of 2024, a jury found defendant Jennifer Crumbley guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter arising from a shooting that occurred on November 30th of 2021 at Oxford High School. Mrs. Crumbley's son, who was charged as an adult, pled guilty to the murders and was ultimately sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The prosecution proceeded on 2 separate theories of criminal liability for involuntary manslaughter: that Mrs. Crumbley acted grossly negligent in storing a firearm and ammunition so as to allow her minor child to access the gun, or alternatively, that she was grossly negligent in failing to control her minor child, it says, so as to prevent him from intentionally harming others. Honest to God, it's like, you have to be a mind reader in order to prevent a crime. You have to be hooked up to some precognition, brainwave device in order to stop something like this. Again, the Crumbleys were not the sharpest knives in the drawer, nor were they necessarily the most ethical people, but they still didn't create any crime, and there was still no crime they committed, rather. It goes on here, it says, at trial, the prosecution offered the testimony of 2 school officials, Sean Hopkins, a counselor at Oxford High, and Nick Ejak, a dean of students at Oxford at the time of the shooting. Hopkins and Ejak were the last 2 school officials to interact with the shooter and his parents hours before the shooting took place. Relative to prosecution's 2 alternative theories of criminal liability for involuntary manslaughter, the court instructed the jury that, quote, it's not necessary that you all agree on which theory has been proven as long as you all agree that the prosecutor proved at least one of those theories beyond a reasonable doubt. It says TT 25224, jury instruction, page 16. On the second day of deliberations, the jury returned its guilty verdict on each of the 4 counts. It says after the trial concluded, it came to light that the prosecutor had entered into proffer agreements with both Hopkins and Ejak. It says see Exhibit A, Ejak proffer agreement, and Exhibit B, Hopkins proffer agreement. As expressly set forth in the agreements, the purpose of the proffer agreements was as follows. It says, quote, to receive truthful information from your client, including information about possible criminal activity by your client and others, and to evaluate your client's credibility as a source of information and potential witness. In return, this office will consider your client's proffer statements in deciding how to resolve this investigation as it relates to your client and any charges pending against your client being prosecuted by this office. Basically, if I'm interpreting that correctly, agree with the prosecutor's office and we will not prosecute school officials. That's it. They wanted a conviction of the parents so that they couldn't or wouldn't go after school officials. And let's face it was the school officials who dropped the ball on all of their policies. I went over that, with a fine-tooth comb here on the show. At least I think I did. It goes on here. It says, despite defense counsel's formal written discovery demanded, dated December 6th of 2021, neither of these proffer agreements nor the recorded proffer interview statements were ever provided to the defense before or during the trial. Exhibit C, written demand for discovery. On March 20th of 2024, prosecutor's office issued a press release indicating that, quote, it has received multiple requests for copies of the 2 proffer agreements provided to Nick Ejak and Sean Hopkins, and further stated, quote, given the ongoing speculation surrounding the proffer agreements and in the interest of transparency, the office is releasing the agreements, unquote. Exhibit D, press release issued by OCPO dated March 20th of 2024. Mrs. Crumbley now moves the court for entry of the judgment of acquittal or, in the alternative, a new trial based on the following issues. Number 1, that defendant is entitled to judgment of acquittal based on the prosecutor's discovery violation under MCR 6.201. And number 2, that defendant is entitled to a new trial based on the prosecution's deliberate suppression of impeachment evidence, i.e. proffer agreements, relating to 2 key prosecution witnesses. Number 3, that defendants' right to due process and a fair trial were violated by the prosecution's assertion of inconsistent theories of culpability. Number 4, that defendant owed no legal duty to the victims of the shooting, such as that she could not be held criminally responsible for involuntary manslaughter. No kidding. I mean, that's the most obvious, that not a single crime was brought up that the Crumbleys engaged in the entire trial. Number 5, it says that defendants' constitutional rights were violated by the court's instruction that the jury could convict defendants in the absence of a unanimous agreement. And number 6, ineffective assistance of counsel. Again, that's an opinion. I don't think that the defense lawyer, her last name was Smith, if memory serves, I don't think she was the best. She seemed, again, disheveled and a number of other things. It was open and closed. She didn't mention, again, in the closing arguments, that there wasn't a single crime that the Crumbleys committed. That in the entire trial, not one crime was committed that she actually engaged in. And again, you can't judge based on emotion. You can't say, well, they're the parents of a school shooter, and we need to hang somebody, so let's just hang them because we feel like it. It was a tainted jury. The entire thing, again, was run on emotion because they didn't have an actual law that any of the Crumbleys actually broke, other than, of course, their son. The son stole the gun. He was in possession of a stolen firearm that was not legally his. And as I said in the past, parents can't legally gift their child a gun legally. You can say it's yours, but that doesn't make it theirs. Not to mention, again, it was in the possession of the Crumbley parents, and Ethan stole it. So, there you go. Again, we'll see what happens with the case, or certainly their appeal. I just find the whole thing beyond disgusting. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. The trial shouldn't have happened in the first place. But Karen McDonald is dirtier than a bag of trash, and she wanted a conviction based on emotion, and she got it. She got 2 of them, as a matter of fact. So, yeah. It's gross, but a reversal would be fantastic. I don't think likely, but we'll see. I certainly hope so. There's this now, and I want to riff on this for a little while because Cicely sent this my way, and instantly a shock went through my spine because I thought to myself, this is a situation in a school that people are not considering, certainly given the influx of illegal aliens and illegal alien adults. And of course, the fact that all schools are soft targets, regardless of what people think or what people want to believe. I'm going to assume that this school shooting that happened on December 4th, I believe, or December 5th actually happened. I have no reason to believe that it necessarily didn't, other than the fact that the mainstream media is covering it, and did briefly cover it here. But either way, if it didn't happen, it still doesn't change the actual situation that is likely. So here was the title. Again, this is from ABC News. It was titled, 2 Kindergartners in Critical but Stable Condition After Christian School Shooting. It says the suspect is dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. It goes on. It says 2 kindergartners, a 5-year-old boy and a 6-year-old boy, are in critical but stable condition on Thursday, after they were shot a day earlier at their small Christian grammar school in Northern California, authorities said. The suspected gunman died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound after entering the school and opening fire on the students Wednesday, according to Butte County Sheriff Corey Honia. I'm saying that right? Probably not. Butte County authorities responded to reports of an active shooter at the Feather River Adventist School near Orville shortly after 1 p.m. The sheriff said a California Highway Patrol trooper was the first to arrive on the scene and found the 2 wounded students in the suspect's body with a handgun nearby. It says the suspected shooter had met with a school administrator earlier in the day to discuss enrolling a student at the school, which teaches kindergarten to 8th grade and has a total of 35 students, according to the sheriff. It's unclear if the meeting was legitimate or a ruse for the suspected gunman to get inside. That's the situation I want to hone in on, but let me finish the article. It says the meeting was described as cordial, quote unquote, and did not set off any alarm bells with the school administrator, the sheriff said. A few minutes after the meeting, the shots rang out, he said. The suspect had been identified and authorities are working to find a motive, the sheriff's office said. Well, they've been identified, but they're probably an illegal alien. And there's no name here, so they're an illegal alien. It says the sheriff said that they may have targeted the school because of its affiliation with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Quote, out of an abundance of caution, we sent an alert out to law enforcement agencies throughout the state of California advising them of this shooting and advising them that the suspect may have targeted the school because of its affiliation with that particular religious organization. So are we talking an illegal Muslim? Seems to be pointing in that direction again, just pointing out the clues here. It says, quote, of our request of those law enforcement agencies was to be vigilant and make sure that those schools are safe and the students are still safe, he added. The suspect was dropped off at the school by an Uber driver who had since been interviewed by police, authorities said. Quote, we're working to essentially reconstruct this individual's activities over the course of today as well as into the past to determine why he did the things he did, unquote. The FBI is helping to process the scene and dig into the suspect's background. Butte County is located about 65 miles north of Sacramento, unquote. Okay. Let's assume it's an illegal. Just for the sake of argument, let's assume it's a Muslim. Just for the sake of argument. It almost doesn't matter. But if you want to paint a picture in your own head as I describe this, let's just go with that. This is how this works in American K-12 school systems, and no school in America has a situation set up, to my knowledge, about how to handle such an event, specifically regarding anybody showing up to the school, attempting to enroll their children, whether they have them or they don't, and then how that gets done without actually meeting anybody to determine whether or not the person attempting to enroll said children in their school does in fact have children or is not there to engage in some other nefarious activity, like killing people. So let's face it, American K-12 schools haven't thought of this situation. This case, whether it be real or not, is a perfect example as to why they haven't considered this situation. Anybody can knock on a front door of a school, whether they have a buzz system in or not, whether they have a speaker system set up or they don't. If they do, and you're anybody who wants into the building for any particular reason, all you have to say is I have a couple of children who need to be enrolled in your school, and I would like to enroll them in your school. How do I go about doing that? Maybe there's an online process of all online verification. Maybe there isn't. But here's the hook, and this is the real problem. In schools' desperation to increase enrollment, to thereby receive potentially more funds, or, in the same wavelength of thought, to virtue signal with all of the illegal aliens and their parents, and we don't want to discriminate, and we love diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the more browns, the better, and all the other phrases that they say to themselves and even state publicly, like the local school district where I live, where they've openly said we're trying to hire more people of color. That's, of course, code language, and it's not even code, for whites need not apply. Because we don't want to hire you first. If it's you and a brown, we're going to hire the brown person first, not the white person. Again, school districts openly admit this. They openly state this. So in their virtue signaling to do both of those things that I just previously mentioned, they're going to open the door for anybody, in particular if they look darker than a white person, and say, well, they'll make up anything they have to in order to get into the door. They'll say, well, I don't have a computer and I don't have internet access, but I want to enroll my kid. They'll say, well, okay, we'll have somebody come and meet you then. What if they do? That person's dead meat. If that person, again, wants to kill somebody who's knocking on the front door of a school building, they can do it. Are they going to be met immediately at the front door by a resource officer? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Will they be frisked before they even enter the building? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. They certainly won't by the schools, again, that are too busy virtue signaling and trying to get as many illegals into their buildings as possible so that they can meet enrollment numbers so that they can get more money. In particular, if it's a public school and they're hooked to state government. Do you see what I'm saying? This is the boy cried wolf. That's all this is. And it's so easy to play on these people who work in these buildings and administrate these buildings because they've been pacified into accepting everybody and anybody no matter what. They've gotten the memos, they've gotten the emails that say, hey, look, if an illegal knocks on your door, enroll their kid because we need the numbers. And they're going to do it. They're going to go, oh, look, a Brown is at the front of the school building trying to get their Brown kids in here. Let's get them in. Wave them on in, and they'll immediately come in. And then it's game on. Then it's the wild, wild west. It's already the wild, wild west, but at the exact same time, this is the situation that they haven't thought about because, again, they're too busy saying that they are proactive when, in fact, they are not. They are reactive. This situation proves it. Whether the situation happened or not, it's irrelevant. It's a simple situation that they have not considered and how easy it is to actually enter a building. Now, I probably told this story a long time ago, but just very quickly. Over 10 years ago, I walked into my old elementary school when I was a little kid. I'd never been in since I left, but I walked back in there because one of my old elementary school teachers was still teaching. I thought to myself, good Lord, you should have retired by now, but okay. And they were about to retire. And I walked back in there after finding out that they still worked there, and I walked right through the front of the building. They had one of those, again, ring me in doorbell things with a little speaker attached, but the door was wide open. I just walked right in, and this was post-Sandy Hook nonsense. This was, the spring of 2014. So again, just over 10 years ago, 10 and a half plus years ago, I walked right into the main office. I could have been armed to the teeth. And it was post-Sandy Hook, which didn't happen. but all of the, again, security parameters and, well, we need to be careful and we need to have this in place and that in place because if we don't, good Lord, our school will become another Sandy Hook. Look how much these people actually cared about any of that. And then it was a few years later when I wrote my second book and I read an article in the local newspaper about how stupid and retarded these middle school administrators were when it came to restorative practices and allowing restorative practices to take place, which, by the way, quick little side note, restorative practices is the reason why the prosecutor in New York City, who is prosecuting Daniel Penny, the ex-Marine who, of course, well, once a Marine, always a Marine, but, the retired now Marine who is on trial for murder, for, again, defending people on a subway train. That particular prosecutor has openly admitted, on camera, that restorative practices is what they have used in the past with people who have actually killed people before. Now, Daniel Penny didn't kill anybody, but at the exact same time, she's openly admitted that she has been given cases where the person did murder somebody, specifically involved, if I'm not mistaken, a guy who was withdrawing money at an ATM, and he was stabbed and fell to the ground, or something along those lines, and he was elderly, fell to the ground and died as a result of being mugged at an ATM by a brown person, if not an illegal. They ended up letting the guy go. Because again, yes, he was mugging a person and caused his death as a result of the elderly person falling to the ground, again, if the elderly person wasn't stabbed or not. But either way, that person died. But again, she let the person go, and she referenced restorative practices. See, my point with the restorative practices thing, again, just as a side note, is that's commonplace in all American K-12 schools as their disciplinary action, and it's not discipline. It's designed to get them back in the classroom without any consequences. So reverting back again to walking back into the old middle school where I used to go, they implemented restorative practices and were talking about how it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I get done writing my book, Violence Among Students and School Staff, and I gave them a free copy, and I said to their faces, "You're dead wrong. You're dead wrong. You're inviting more problems because you're not doing the things that you should be doing the first time, which is expulsion, immediate removal, and a number of other very quick, swift moves, rather than all of this peer mediation and let's give them another chance and let's brainwash their actions rather out of their minds and out of their decision-making process, because they'll all be using the same language that we use. And as long as we all use the same language, well, that means everybody's going to be doing the right thing. This is how retarded these people are. But that right there, again, back to the actual situation, that was 10 plus years ago. And even, again, 7 years ago, I walked right into the front door of those buildings. I didn't knock on the door and go, "Hi, I'm a parent and I have kids that I want to enroll." Nope, I just walked right in. Now, their policies have changed since, I'm certain. But what happens, again, if I was a brown illegal and I needed to get my brown illegal kids enrolled in your school where you claim that you love brown illegals and you want more and more brown illegals and as many as you can possibly get, and you might be even interviewed as a parent to potentially be an employee of other brown illegals and teach other brown illegals in that same school district. Those doors of that school are going to open so fast that illegal's head is going to spin around in a circle on their neck. And they're in the building. And then it's game on. I'm shocked this doesn't happen more frequently. I truly am. So I'm saying this now on the record. This is going to happen again. Anybody knocking on these doors to bring in their illegal alien children, whether they even have them or they're lying, and they just want access to the building for a moment to stab somebody, kill somebody, shoot somebody, rob somebody, whatever it is, there aren't enough resource officers around nor policy in place to stop this from happening. So mark my words, this is going to happen again. I've even gone so far as to tell the local Facebook group filled with brainwashed individuals in the local area where I live about this exact situation that I just laid out in this story. And I'm asking questions. Do you have policy in place to deal with this? Do you not have policy in place to deal with such a thing? If a brown person walked right up to your building and knocked on the door and said they had kids, how do you verify that they actually have students? Or children that they want to be students in your building? How does that verification process get made before they even again show up? Is there a resource officer there to frisk them as soon as they walk in? The answer is no. They don't. They're not even thinking about these kinds of things. I bet they don't even know that this thing happened the other day. Hell, I didn't know it happened until Cicely brought it to my attention, and I read it and I thought, again, instantly, of all the things to think, the first thing I thought was, oh, okay, it's still easy to enter a school building. Public, private, or charter, doesn't really matter. All I have to do is say that I have a child that I want to enroll, and I'll get a meeting in the blink of an eye with an administrator, and then maybe I kill that administrator. I mean, that's it. It's that simple. This right here is where all those technology tools don't mean jack. None of them mean anything in an American school building. Well, don't worry, we locked down the building and, yes, we saw the person on camera, and yes, we opened the door to them because they wanted to enroll their children, and we couldn't have seen this coming. Well, if you couldn't have seen it coming, then why with all the technology pieces? Why do you have all the so-called preventative measures in place, so you like to think? And all of the wares that you have, and all of the tchotchkes that you make teachers wear around their necks for this, that, or the other, when you're just going to let anybody walk through the front door who claims that they have children that they want to enroll when in fact they don't. It delegitimizes every single technological tool and program and policy that a school has in place when it comes to, we're going to keep everybody safe, no one's going to die, no one will get shot, we promise. We're working very hard to keep all of these buildings in place and blah, blah, blah. Eventually, you have to come face to face with someone who wants to hurt you. And if someone wants to hurt you, they have to come in face to face with you. And clearly, the easiest way to do that is to lie. and, and say that you want to enroll your kids. And then you go, "No, yeah, sure, no problem. Come on in." I'm done talking about it for now, but my God, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't this prove it? Doesn't it prove how gullible these buildings are and the people who work within? They aren't vigilant. They're over-trusting. And unfortunately, as school officials, they trust one another, which is a huge mistake, which, as you've heard me say a million times, and General George S. Patton said it a million times, and ancient philosophers before him, when everybody's thinking alike, someone's not thinking. And they'll all get together and say, "Well, we don't have a problem, our policies are fine, everything is great." Okay, tell yourself whatever you have to until it happens to you. But you've been warned. This will happen again. It's too easy to walk into a building. Too easy. Even after the fake Uvalde and Nashville nonsense, it's still too easy. All right, I'm just getting started. I'm just getting started here on this education stuff. This is wild. Okay. You've heard me bring up in the past the Westerville City Schools in Central Ohio. Their levy failed, which thank God it did, as I mentioned in previous episodes, certainly right after the election. It failed by at least 2,000 votes. You would think that maybe, just maybe, these people would have a brain in their skull. Turns out, not the case. They've apparently decided to double down on their stupidity as a school board. They don't appear to be cutting anybody. In their last board meeting, which took place this last Monday of this week, they had their treasurer get up and provide the same explanation that they've always provided in other financial meetings before. She goes back, she sits down, and then they open up the comments for people who want to comment on what was just presented. The same guy who's always shown up, that I've played his audio before, I'm going to play it right now, who showed up and criticized the board and gone after them, in particular about their finances and balancing the books and tightening the belt, moving $30 million over from your private fund to the general fund, and that's how you can fund things, XYZ. He shows up and he says the exact same thing again. Now that the levy has failed, maybe you'll start doing what the people want you to do. This isn't, however, how the school board is interpreting anything. They are quite literally doubling down that they are going to put another levy on the ballot the next time that they can, which might be in the spring during the primaries. I'm not kidding. Again, they lost by 2,000 votes. Now, what have we learned from school boards over the years here regarding money? Here's what we've learned. Just again, to refresh some people's memory in case anybody has forgotten. What they do is they manipulate the public by saying, well, we had to get rid of so-and-so. And if we get rid of this person and we get rid of that person, and those people that we've gotten rid of have a bunch of friends who didn't vote for the levy the last time, maybe you should vote for the levy again so that we can bring those positions back. And all they'll do is whine and bitch and moan the entire time about how all the services that they once had, they no longer have, and well, students are hurting, and it's the public's fault because the public won't pay for it. So they'll start to take away things to punish the public, so they think. But they're in Zootsving, and they're putting their own nails in their own coffins, time and time again. You heard me again with this school district bring up their elimination of LifeWise. They might have gotten a levy. They might have actually gotten one if they'd have kept LifeWise in place, but they didn't get it because they were so self-absorbed and they gave the squeaky wheel the grease when it came to whack job communist leftists showing up and saying, you can't have a Christian program associated with the school, and the right to religious instruction is awful, even though it's state law, but we don't care about that, and blah, blah, blah. There were so many LifeWise participants that just got stabbed in the back and in the front by the school district for eliminating LifeWise that they actually still thought that a levy would pass, that this wouldn't backfire on them, that this wouldn't even look bad. Not to mention, of course, the hiring of a Muslim activist, of a female brown Muslim activist, in the face of eliminating a Christian program. Hello? They didn't think any of this was gonna backfire. This is how dumb they are. So let me play his audio first. Again, this is a Doug Krinsky. The school board hates him. The school board has literally intimidated this guy or attempted to intimidate this guy in public meetings before. And then what happened at the end of the public comments section is the dead giveaway and the dead ringer that this school district hates the people. They hate them. And they hate the people who attend, and they hate anybody who is a conservative, and they're telling this to you to your face with a policy change that they want to implement. And it's one that's been implemented and changed and manipulated in school districts all across the nation on a constant basis. You might know where I'm going with this. Let me play his audio first here so you can give his little roundup a listen, because it's fantastic. In 3, 2, 1.
Now that the levy was defeated, since you say you're looking for feedback, here are some ideas. Just before I kick into this, talk about tax rates and tax dollars. The tax dollars are not going down. If anything, the tax dollars are going up due to the inside millage. So as much as I appreciate that presentation, I think everybody needs to understand tax dollars are not going down in the district. So number one, and I'm surprised this didn't appear on the 5-year projection, because I know at the forums we heard this, but the transfer back of the $30 million that was transferred out of the general operating fund does not appear to be being transferred back into the general operating fund, but I would suggest that we do that. Second thing is salaries and benefits. I appreciate that you've actually reduced a little bit in an attempt to lower the 5-year projection deficit, but it's not enough. It's not nearly enough. The public has spoken. Don't spend dollars you don't have. So when I look at the deficit, there's an easy way to fix that. The projections for the salaries and benefits are still at 31% and 44% increases, which are way too high. There's an absolute area for improvement to lower that and get it more in line. Also, when I look at the administrative expense and I compare that to other districts, the socio-economic excuse I heard last time about why our administrative expense is so high is not a good reason for having an inflated administrative expense. There's an opportunity there for $5 to $6 million per year to be pulled out of expenses for salaries and benefits. I would also offer an early retirement program for employees. They've done it in the past. It can be done again, and it would be a cost-saving measure. Another cost-saving measure would be to do a cost-sharing program with employees. If an employee can find a cost savings, share the expense with them and let them benefit from being innovative and coming up with a cheaper way to do something or a cheaper cost. Union contracts, they will be coming up, all 4 of them, and I would offer, instead of just offering the typical 2.6 to 2.7 increases with a $300 bonus, reduce that to, say, 1%, and then here's a unique idea, a 1% bonus for every single employee in the district, contingent on all grades going up to a minimum standard level, say 70% pass rate. Every employee would be engaged in the whole process and would make everybody focused on one thing, getting the grade scores up, and then they get a bonus. The other thing is purchased materials, supplies, materials, capital outlay, and other objects in the 5-year projection next year are showing a 22% increase, $12 million. That, to me, in your work group, should be absolutely addressed and reduced. I don't think we all want to battle over another levy over the next 6 months. There's plenty of other things to be worried about and plenty of solutions that are on the table. I hope as a board, you take the opportunity to listen to truly what the community, including myself, offer to the board as ideas for solutions. We don't need to go through another levy battle. There are solutions. Businesses like 3 that I've been involved in cycle up and down. There's always down cycles. You have to do something about that. What you do is you look to cut costs. It's an opportunity. I suggest take advantage of it. A couple other loose ends I'd like to offer. I hear there's going to be public comments potentially going from 5 to 3 minutes. There's no need to do that. Silencing the public by shortening their comments only serves to divide the community more. It's not about time, it's about control. Let the public have their few minutes every 2 weeks. Second item, I notice occasionally, and I don't go there every week, but there seems to be a lot of cars for sale on the Westerville North lot over the weekend. We're not a used car business. I think that needs to be eliminated and those cars need to be towed. I also would suggest we do term limits for the board. 2 terms of 5 years each, I think, would be more than enough for every board member to serve. The last thing is board member names. If a board member says or does something to me as a public official, they should be held accountable. And for us not to be able to use a board name, I think is absolutely ridiculous in the public comment section. It's just silly. We're all adults. Let's just be accountable. Let's be professional and allow that practice to occur. I suggest you change that policy. Thank you.
You may have heard very faintly there at the end, someone in the room said, time, like, you're out of time, you can't talk anymore. And he goes, thank you. He was done with what he had to say. But he's the most hated person in the room, which means he's the most correct person in the room. He's the most knowledgeable person in the room. Now, this is funny because, again, he alluded to it also, which is interesting. A couple of things. First of all, he did point out a few things, actually. But first of all, he pointed out to the treasurer's presentation, which finished just before he spoke, that she was manipulating the numbers again and not telling the full truth. He's correct on that. She isn't. So, again, he calls out her lying and her misleading immediately, which is beautiful. The second thing, which, again, is so easy to catch, in particular if that's what you're looking for. And these people aren't learning because they're not taking any suggestions from the public because they're all women, no offense, and they all want to look like they're all correct all of the time because they're in league with one another. They don't want to be different. They even make that statement later on in the meeting when they say, well, we're all on the same team and we're all here to work together. No, you're not. You're different board members elected separately. You're not there to all agree. You're there to ask questions. There's supposed to be vigorous debate, but there isn't. They all just say yes, yes, yes on every single thing. The second thing that he brought up, which was interesting, was start paying teachers, because it's a suggestion he made, start paying teachers based on merit. That if student scores go up, then you give them a bonus. And if they don't within certain classrooms, then you don't. There's two problems with this, really just one problem. The suggestion is one that is made because it's a private school suggestion, and it's a private school policy in a lot of private schools. The better the students do academically, the more the teacher gets paid. Sometimes that's a paid incentive that does exist within private and even charter schools. However, the downside of all of that, it is rife with fraud and nepotism like you cannot possibly believe. Although you're smart people, you can believe it. There's absolutely no way that you could implement such a policy in a public school environment and not have it be filled with fraud. People would immediately start fudging grades. They would immediately start making their instruction more simple. And just like that, all of the grades would immediately start going up. And then all of those teachers who were doing all of that by dumbing everything down for everybody, all they would end up doing is getting more money. That's exactly what would happen because that's exactly what happens. So it's a bad suggestion because it's already a nepotistic environment. It's already a fraudulent environment. It would only open the door for more nepotism and more fraud and more favoritism, and that's poisonous in any working environment. So again, it's a bad suggestion. But the last thing that he suggested and alluded to, which I'll make mention of now because it happened later on in the meeting, and they sort of back and forth slightly debated about this and also did not, is the business of public participation. And this was the predictable thing that typically happens when the truth gets exposed of a school district. So they had one of their other district office administrators show up and give a presentation on this particular motion to change the public participation. This bootlicker gets up there And he says, so here's the issue, and here's what we would like to do, and here's what we want to do. They want to move, again, the public participation from 5 minutes per person down to 3, which it's 3 minutes in a lot of places anyway, and 5 minutes is very generous, but it doesn't matter. You give people 5 minutes, they usually have more than enough time. 3 minutes is a little short. And, unfortunately, that's just the way that it is in lots of different places. The overarching point that the administrator made, though, at the beginning of his talk is he said, well, just as a quick reminder, it's not Ohio law that states that school boards have to have a public participation section whatsoever. So you should count yourselves lucky, as he's sort of bobbing his head around. This is the implication. You should count yourselves lucky that we even have public participation because it's not law, and frankly, we don't have to do it if we don't want to. So he starts off by saying that, like a dickhead would. And then he comes in with, well, it's 5 minutes, let's move it down to 3. We've had it last for over an hour before, let's knock it back to 30 minutes. Which, anybody doing math, that's 10 people across a 30-minute period for 3 minutes a person. Now, the way it works in the local school district where I live is that's how they have it set up. They have it set up just like that. 3 minutes per person for 30 minutes. But if more people volunteer, they still let them speak for 3 minutes. And it still goes past the 30-minute mark, and it lasts for as long as it lasts until everybody gets done. So even having a time limit on it is stupid, because you should just let people speak on what they want to speak about. Where it got even dumber, and the school district, again, in Westerville was making this particular motion and this implication, even though they didn't vote on it that night, was that not only should all of that exist by lowering the amount of time, but if you're going to speak, you have to be either a resident, an employee, a contractor, a parent, a guardian, or a student, or a taxpayer of the actual district. That if you're an outsider with legit advice, and you haven't been told to show up and speak, you're not allowed to speak in the public comments section. If you're a concerned citizen from a neighboring town, and you want to educate these people on the record in public, you're not allowed to do that. Now, why would they make that motion and make this a particular parameter for this? Simple. It had to do with the LifeWise group. And that Christian group LifeWise that was kicked out of the district, and then the president of LifeWise, who doesn't live in Westerville, showed up and spit nothing but truth to that entire school board about what they were doing, the mistake they were making, the lies that they were believing, and what LifeWise really does with students. See, they don't want to be humiliated. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to get exposed. This is what criminals do. This is how they behave. They rob a bank, and then they look at each other and say, well, let's not rob banks anymore. Let's look for something else to rob. But we're going to make it public that we're not robbing banks anymore, so if you think you're going to catch us, you're not going to catch us at a bank because we don't do that anymore. They're openly admitting they have something to hide. They're openly admitting they don't want public input. They're openly admitting this. That's what all these moves mean. That's what all these moves make. And when they openly say, we need another levy, which they did say in the meeting, it was a 3-hour meeting that I watched. Again, they openly said, we're going to have another levy. This is the way it's going to have to be. They're not listening, and they're not learning. So who's going to make up that 2,000 person difference in the end? It's going to have to be illegal aliens. It's the only answer. They're going to have to start letting illegal aliens vote. It's going to have to be voter fraud, because they lost by over 2,000 plus votes. They should lose by more the next time. The simple fact that they think that they have the gall to propose another levy in the face of their last one failing, and they're continuing to not learn, should mean that more people can see these people as a criminal organization. Again, they should be putting their own nails in their own coffins, which is what I think they're doing, but other people might not think that who live locally because they're brainwashed and stupid. Let's see. There was also this. They wanted people, and this was an odd one, but it is one that does happen. this was another parameter. They were literally bouncing this around again as board members and talking about this, and they all seemed to kind of agree, although one person spoke up and was like, well, I don't know, that seems kind of strange. They openly said that they don't want two people speaking about the same topic in the public comments section. Again, wrap your head around that one. It can't get more communistic in these environments, ladies and gentlemen. If there is a massive issue, which there clearly has been, say, for example, you wanted to speak up against the levy, that means that if one person speaks out against the levy and the next person wants to speak out against the levy, they will cut you off, and you're not allowed to speak about the levy because somebody else before you already did. These people, again, in these positions, as stupid and liberal and Marxist and communist and brainwashed NPC as they are, they don't know that they're eroding their own rights as Americans, and they don't even care. See, they think, again, that their rules for them are different from anybody else in public, which means, again, they think that they're better than everybody. But they don't understand they're setting a precedent for something to exist, potentially even in the long-term future, by the erosion of the rights of the public to speak freely and openly about any number of things as often as they want, and that somehow that's not going to back up on them. There also, again, as you heard Doug Krinsky just bring up there, he also said that it doesn't seem fair that anybody showing up to the lectern doesn't get to single out board members and talk about them personally. They most certainly do. Anybody has a constitutional right to do that, and anybody in any school board meeting can do that. Just because it's their policy doesn't make it constitutional law. Policy does not override law. So the reason that they're not doing that is because they don't want, the public to know what individuals have done, which reverts back to what I even brought up on Jesse James's show before Thanksgiving. That individuals like Doug Krinsky have to have a Substack page. Call it something like Westerville Schools Truth, or whatever it is. You can make up any name for the channel that you want, or the publication outlet that you want, and then you write individualized articles discussing what it is that they aren't doing, and then call these people out by name for what they've actually done and the way that they've behaved. Tell the truth, so that you don't get sued for slander or libelous behavior, but at the exact same time, you have to hold these people accountable in writing to some extent. This lets them know that they're not getting off the hook. This lets them know that they can shut down individuals as much as they want in the public comment sections of their meetings, which just means, what should you do as a public? Have your own public comment section. Have your own recorded MP3 audio file that you upload to this Substack that your community starts and throws out there, and then link the board meeting in there, and then the different topics that were brought up, and then you can again keep hammering them with audio files of your opinions on what you think that they're doing, and then of course send it to the board and say, here's our public comments section for your last board meeting. Here's all the people who wanted to speak and they didn't get the chance because of your stupid rules. And then you let them have it. Now, as you know, I'm going to say this because I have to. That's a lot of work for a whole lot of nothing. Because you could just pull your children out and stop caring about the school district and not have to worry about it. Yes, you'll still have to worry about it when it comes to levies and you having your tax dollars stolen, which is what people like Doug Krinsky really care about, I think. And he should, and that's what everybody should care about. They should care about being robbed from these school districts and by these school districts. So, I mean, yeah, hold these people accountable for stealing from you, because that's really what they're doing. They don't really give a damn about students or academic success or the truth. If they did, they would take the suggestions from more knowledgeable people. They would let more people show up and give them advice. But these women, and they are all women, are digging in like ticks. In fact, one of the last speakers was one of the representatives for all of the bus drivers and all of the classified staff and the food service workers. He was this, I don't know, black mixed race guy, and he's just painting a picture here, and he shows up and he starts talking about how great the school district is, and some changes need to be made, and some things are good and some things are not, but I trust you and you can handle this well. And then he says this. He says, when my grandma raised me, she always said, when there's a group of women all working together, you know good things are going to get done. He openly says this in the public comments section, licking the boots of all of these women on this board. Everybody on one end of the table, which is the female treasurer, all the way through every female board member, right down to the female superintendent. You should have seen the looks on those women's faces when he complimented all of them. They all leaned back in their chairs. They all got big smiles on their faces. Because remember, when women are all working together, nothing bad can happen. It's absurd. When everybody's thinking alike, someone's not thinking. And they're not thinking. They're putting nails in their own coffin. They will be remembered for destroying that school district and believing lies that caused that school district's destruction. I love it. Me personally, I love it. But this is how delusional these places are. So yes, people need to keep walking away from them. They are not safe. They are not considering endless things, and they don't care about you. They don't care about the public. They don't give a damn what you think. And the last thing they want is a knowledgeable man showing up to a group of women when that knowledgeable man knows more about everything than any of them do. Certainly about balancing the book and running a business. It's incredible. But they're not going to give up because they're that stubborn. Those women on that board are that stupid and that stubborn. And they're not alone. And it's not just women. It's men too. A lot of these boards will get these good old boys on those boards and they'll all dig in like ticks too. And the last thing they want is another man or another woman showing up telling them how to do their job better than they can do it. So this happens nationwide, but these districts are collapsing, both colleges and K-12 schools, and I love it. Now, speaking of that school district and the LifeWise program, this right here is a perfect example of what happens when you kick Jesus to the curb and you open the door for the devil himself to walk right in. Again, this was even brought up to the Westerville City Schools with what happens when you get rid of LifeWise as a Christian program. When you get rid of it, what are you likely to invite in? Well, as it turns out, in Marysville, Ohio, you invite in the Satanic Temple. This was from KRONchannel4.com. From Marysville, Ohio again, titled, Ohio School to Offer New Religious Release Program Through Satanic Temple. Of course, it's called the HAIL program. The Hellion Academy of Independent Learning, HAIL, will begin in Marysville's Edgewood Elementary School in December as a part of the district's permitted release time for religious instruction. The program is put on by the Satanic Temple, the only satanic religious organization recognized as a church by the IRS and federal court system. It says June Everett, the campaign director for the after-school Satan Club and an ordained minister for the Satanic Temple, said a parent reached out to the Satanic Temple asking for a program at Edgewood. Everett said the Satanic Temple's program for students are only implemented when parents seek them out and only in districts where other release programs are already in place. Now here's the thing. If you think it's possible for a 3-letter agency or anybody pretending to be a parent in the district calling up the Satanic Temple and saying, hey, come on over to our school district and this school district because we would like you to exist. By law, they could exist. However, the school district has to approve it. But as it says here, it says Everett said that the parent who sought out HAIL was searching for an alternative to LifeWise, as students who do not attend sometimes feel left out or ostracized. LifeWise welcomes any student, but she said some parents don't want to send their children to the program for various reasons. She said that's where Hale comes in. Quote, "We aren't trying to shut the LifeWise Academy down, but I do think a lot of school districts don't realize they open the door for one religion. They open the door for them all," Everett said. It's almost like a threat. Well, if you have LifeWise and you have Jesus, well, you're going to get us and you're going to get the devil. Why do people keep sending their children here? Why? Again, we know why. But it says, again, both LifeWise and Hale have open enrollment for Marysville parents available online. So LifeWise still does exist in this school district. But take Westerville, for example, because they've done away with LifeWise, what would they look like if they invited in the Satanic Temple? What would they look like if they invited a Muslim mosque organization or a Jewish synagogue organization? Would they allow it? See, now their backs have been put up against a wall because by doing away with LifeWise, they would have to do away with everything. I hope somebody is suing Westerville for getting rid of LifeWise. I really do. It was an open. It seems like an open and shut lawsuit. You had this program in place for 2 years. You kicked students out. They wanted it. The parents and everybody in the area wanted it. Certainly the vast majority wanted it. They outnumbered the people who didn't want it, but you let the squeaky wheel get the grease and you got rid of it. So now if a new group shows up and you accept them and they're not a Christian group, then what? Sue them. It's amazing. Absolutely incredible. Here's another one. I'm not even done with education. In fact, I'm hardly even getting started. Listen to this one. This was from a local organization. Again, a local grant-funded organization, I'm certain, the Coalition for a Healthier Community, Oxford area. This was a flyer that went out promoting a particular movie and a community watch party for people to get together and watch this as a group. Now, first of all, if you do such a thing, you should be hit in the head with a tack hammer because you're a moron. That's number one. Number two, if you still send your children to school environments after claiming that all of this is bad, then you really should be hit in the head with a tack hammer. They claim that they're going to be getting together and watching a movie called Screenagers, Elementary School Edition. It says this new version of the original Screenagers movie addresses issues that elementary school age kids, parents, and educators are facing, i.e., smartwatches in class, unhooking from and monitoring video gaming, social media pressures, it says, exposure too young, and what research shows is a healthy amount of screen time, with many other solutions to these and other challenges. And it's a 55-minute movie, apparently. Again, this is absurd because the school environment forces this on teachers, and it forces it on students. There isn't anything that can change the school environment. You can't get rid of this stuff. They've invited it in, they pay money to participate, they receive money for participating, along with all of the toys, games, gimmicks, and nonsense that they receive as a result. And then what? They're not going to just do away with it because the community says so. Again, you're watching a movie about how bad the environment is and the bad things that exist in the environment and society, and yet you keep sending your children, or you think you can have a positive impact in removing these devices from the school environment when you can't. The only thing that's going to change is whether or not you send your children to these environments or you don't. And this is a perfect example of astroturfing. To tie in the last episode, this is astroturfing in a nutshell. It's gatekeeping also. They're trying to do whatever they have to do to educate you about something that's bad in the environment while still sending you to said environment. All you have to do is leave. All you have to do as a parent is take your devices away from your children. Have them do push-ups, sit-ups, and read nonfiction books. But no, It's technological devices. And then we're going to complain about how they all exist in the school environment and how teachers and administrators are all using them all of the time. But we're still going to send them. It makes zero sense. These people aren't learning. I mean, this is serious mental illness. I've got 3 financial stories for you here. These are also incredible. Again, I love this stuff. I love it. I love how, again, they're trying to pick up mercury with a fork. They're trying to print off as much dollars as they possibly can, and they can't do it. So then, of course, they lower their standards. They close their schools, and they do a number of other just, playing a shell game and moving things around to try to trick people. And they don't understand that it's their own doing that causes all of this. This was sent to me by a previous guest and a listener of the show, Mr. Smith. He knows exactly who he is. Thank you very much for sending this to me from Missouri and the MissouriIndependent.com, titled, Missouri Education Officials Lower GPA Threshold for Teacher Certification. Why would they do that? The Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education believes that lowering a GPA requirement for teachers will improve teacher recruitment and retention without reducing educator quality, said no one with a brain. Not to mention, if their GPA is through the roof, that doesn't mean that they're going to be effective. There's no correlation. There's quite literally zero correlation between grade point average of an incoming teacher at their previous institution as a teacher education student and their ability to teach their subject and manage a classroom truthfully, honestly, and effectively. Zero correlation. Missouri educators, it says, will no longer need a 3.0 grade point average in their subject area to teach in public schools beginning in July. The State Board of Education unanimously voted Tuesday. So who do you think this is going to bring in? It's going to bring in more activists. It's going to bring in more minorities. It's going to make things worse. Not going to make anything better. The threshold to be qualified to teach in the state is now a 2.5 grade point average in the teacher's content area. The only exception will be special education teachers who will still be required to meet the 3.0 mark. Where's the correlation that says that that's even effective? The correlation between a 3.0 GPA and being a special education teacher, and that somehow leads to someone's level of effectiveness. There is none. Again, the business is a lie from beginning to end, top to bottom, foundation, root level, all the way up, through the drywall, the plumbing, and the electric, and everything else. There are no correlations to anything. Nothing's hooked to one another. It's just whatever they say goes. Don't say brainwashing isn't real. It most certainly is. It says officials with the Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education say the change is intended to increase the number of certified teachers coming back into public schools. There's your honest. There's the honest part right there. They want bodies. They want people with pulses. They don't care about anything else. They just want somebody who has a pulse. Commissioner of Education Carla Eslinger, I'm saying that right, said in a statement that the change would remove unnecessary barriers to the teaching profession. If it was an unnecessary barrier, why'd you have it in the first place? It says there is no evidence tying a particular GPA in the content area to more effective teaching, said another member. Yeah, so why'd you have it in the first place? It says Daryl Fridley, I'm saying that right? Probably not. The department's education preparation coordinator told that to the board on Tuesday, quote, most of the non-teaching professional options in sciences, math, and history do not require such a high GPA. This is a 3.0 GPA requirement most impacts teachers in STEM subjects, he said. There's still no correlation. Again, they say there isn't a correlation between this and that, but there is when it comes to STEM. Yes, yes, yes. No, there isn't. You can't prove that there is. He says when the department looked at teacher candidates who met other requirements but didn't meet the GPA standard, nearly a quarter of those disqualified were in STEM. Teacher candidates must still pass a performance assessment with a test of subject knowledge to be certified. Of those who didn't meet the GPA requirements, 90% passed the performance assessment, Fridley said. The department hopes the new requirement will bring more teachers into the profession. Currently, almost 44% of first-year teachers are certified in Missouri. Only 44% are certified in their first year. So you got a bunch of people teaching uncertified. But even certification doesn't mean effective education, doesn't mean effective instruction. It says over a quarter of serving as a substitute teacher, 6% have no certification and the rest have alternative certifications. It's a long article here, but wow, I'm going to keep going. This is good. It says, quote, discussions about this issue often include the question, isn't this a case of lowering standards, Fridley said. Well, yeah. We maintain that a third of the state's first-year teachers have no more than a substitute teaching certificate, and some with even less. Any action that leads to a higher proportion of first-year teachers completing the preparation program is actually a net gain for the overall quality of teachers. Oh, how sorely mistaken you are. It says, in the midst of low teacher retention rates and poor recruitment. Well, that's whose problem is that? It says the change is welcome. The department reiterated, quote, both quantity and quality of teachers are really important to the learning of students. Paula Katnick, Assistant Commissioner of Education Quality, said during Tuesday's meeting. The department reiterated that it doesn't believe the lower GPA threshold will affect teacher quality. Well, it isn't going to make it better. So what is it going to do? It says 2019 study out of Texas showed that there was no improvement in achievement outcomes between 2.5 GPA and 2.75 GPA requirement. Increasing the threshold to 3.0 excluded 44% of education students and brought a small increase on teachers' evaluations. It says the study concludes a higher GPA criteria would also have minimal impact on the quality of our nation's teachers. Okay, so that means that if your baseline of effectiveness is running flat, it doesn't matter how many high GPA or low GPA people you're bringing into the business, your baseline is still flat. You're still not achieving more when you bring in higher GPA people, and you're admitting that. That's my interpretation of this anyway. Now listen again how totally supportive, and that's a direct quote, how totally supportive everybody is of this. They're all on the same page because they all got the same memo. So they're all going to do the exact same thing and approve everything no matter what. No matter the consequences either. It says Carol Hallquist, Vice President of the State Board of Education, said she was initially wary of lowering the GPA standard, but is now totally supportive. Well, what kickback did she get to change her mind? It says, quote, when I reached out to principals and people who were in teacher preparation programs, they said there was no correlation and were very supportive, she said. They also said you have to pass licensing tests, and that is really what we want to look at. Is it? Is it really? Again, licensing and holding a license doesn't mean anything. Danielle Mann has held a license for the last, 30 some odd years of her teaching career in the town where I live, and she's TikTok famous for losing her mind post-election. If she's the barometer and the measuring stick here for, well, if you're certified, then, you're the best, you're the best thing since sliced bread. Give me a break. It says Doug Hayter, Executive Director of the Missouri Association of School Administrators, told The Independent He has been speaking to the department about the GPA requirements and is optimistic. It's because everybody's bleeding enrollment. They're bleeding teachers. No one wants to be teachers. They're scraping from the bottom of the barrel and they don't have another choice. That's my quotation, not his. He said, quote, though, there is a balance where we need to have requirements that mean something, but the research that they have seems to indicate that this change would not have a substantial impact on teacher effectiveness, he said. Quote, as long as that's the case, we want to give educators as many options as possible in a world where there's still a lot of open positions in regard to public education. But why? Why are there open positions? Why are people leaving the business? It's degenerate, it's manipulative, it's a criminal organization, and they're jabbed and dying. And you fall for every single new thing that comes down the pipeline, like clockwork. It says, further helping open doors for new teachers is a reinstatement of the general science certification for high school educators. The department has required science teachers to specialize in an area, like chemistry or biology. But now we'll bring back a certification for generalists with a broader knowledge base. Quote, the reinstatement of this general science certificate will create opportunities for more students to choose to be science teachers, not by lowering standards, but instead by creating a path in which the standards are more aligned with the needs of schools. What it means is, translation from someone who's been in the business, if you're certified in science, that building administrator is going to make you teach whatever science subject that they want you to teach, whether you want to teach it or not. If you're certified in science now, and you've never taught a day in chemistry, guess who's the new chemistry teacher? The guy or gal who's never taught chemistry in their life and doesn't want to. That's your new school teacher. How about anatomy and physiology? Well, Mr. and Miss So-and-so, we need a new anatomy and physiology teacher in this building. And so-and-so just got killed because they believed the COVID bioweapons were going to help them. Turns out they're dead. Anywho, they don't work here anymore, and we need a new anatomy and physiology teacher. So since you love biology, we now need you to teach anatomy and physiology. Similar, but not the same, but it's still in the sciences, and you're certified in science, and now you're going to have to redo the entire curriculum from scratch. All on your own. We know that you've spent the last 5 years working on your biology curriculum, but too bad. Short end of the stick on this one. Now you have to teach another science subject that you've never taught in your life, and you don't have a curriculum for. So go back to teaching it right out of the online curriculum or the textbook, and good luck. And then you're starting from scratch again. Teachers hate this. They hate it. They are creatures of habit. They go into the profession to teach a subject because they love that subject, in particular if it's middle school and high school. If they're elementary school teachers, well, it's because usually they want to be mothers. So they get around a lot of children to get some experience. That's not unusual. Doesn't make them subject experts in all the 5+ subjects that they might be teaching at the elementary level. But when you disrupt the working environment like this, that's what will happen as a result of generalizing all of these certifications, and certainly science. It's going to piss off endless science teachers. Unbelievable. This is amazing. What a nightmare. It finishes up 2 last sentences. It says, quote, this is one small part of a bigger picture of making sure that we have very effective educators in our classrooms moving forward, he said. Oh, joke's on you. It says the bigger picture, quote unquote, Hader said, includes boosting teacher pay and making schools welcoming for educators. Unquote. Uh-oh. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. They're openly admitting now if you walk in with a science certification with a lowered GPA, that building administration in that district is going to tell you what to teach and when to teach it. And you're stuck. So Yeah, good luck with all of that. Sounds like a nightmare. Speaking of nightmares, how about this one? Little Rush Limbaugh impression here, right out of the newspapers. Here we go. Dayton Daily News, Dayton, Ohio. Headline, Struggling Central State, Making Major Changes. School had 5.2 million revenue shortfall in September. Well, why is that? As it turns out, 3 major reasons. It's a majority black school in Dayton, Ohio. That's number 1. Number 2, increased costs of maintenance and upkeep of the school. And number 3, lowered enrollment. That's it. That's how you crush a business. It's not difficult to do. You have no customers, you still have to pay for rent, and your product sucks. What else is it? I don't have a business degree. I've never run a business in my life. But I know that much. I've used the t-shirt shop example before, right? Your t-shirts suck. You have a t-shirt shop. No one likes your t-shirts. You're politically motivated. You say stupid things in your t-shirts. No one wears them. They don't fit. They don't look good. You don't have customers. And you still have to pay for the manufacture of t-shirts and keeping the roof of your shop over your head. Which means what then? You have to cut employees. You cut employees, you cut programs. When you do that, no one really wants to show up because you don't have the program nor the employees that they maybe thought was attractive, but you still have to pay rent for that roof. The school will collapse. It'll have no choice. No one wants to be a nurse who has a brain anymore either, because everybody has to be jabbed to be a nurse. This falls back on a subject I've mentioned a gazillion times on the show. Same thing. This is how you bring down a nation. This is how you bring down systems. You force them to injure themselves via injection, along with any other thing, of course, that you're implementing that the individuals running the establishment are unknowledgeable of. And then as all of that is happening and you're losing employees and not getting new ones, everybody's scratching their head as to why the walls are caving in. It can't get more obvious. There's this too. Little piece of audio with this explanation equally as stupid. This was from Yahoo Finance. U.S. college closures are expected to soar, Fed research says. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
To be clear, elite colleges like the Ivies are still charging up to $100,000 a year. So we're talking about schools that don't have the name recognition that a Harvard or a Yale does.
Yeah, that's right. These are not the most well-known schools, but we are seeing this as an increasingly popular trend across the U.S. schools that need to find ways to stand out. Enrollment is down. They're having a hard time attracting students. So they're looking to these tuition resets, as they call them, to get more people in the door. But these are not your brand name schools.
So we mentioned Bethel University. There's a couple of other ones. And the strategy of tuition resets, is it working in the short term? I mean, is Bethel seeing more interest?
They say it is. They say they're signing up more students. They've got more students coming to networking events. There's a school in Virginia where the president went on billboards announcing this. These schools often cater to local students. They're competing maybe with the state school. These are kids that are probably staying in the area. So they have gotten attention. It's definitely working as a marketing tool. They're getting more people in the door. I mean, whether this is a long-term strategy, whether they can stay viable, deep into the future with this, that remains to be seen. But they are saying in the short term, it's working.
Yeah, there was Mills College, which is an all-women's school in Oakland, California, that also cut its tuition. But a couple of years later, it got absorbed into Northeastern.
If you talk to experts, this isn't the best sign, right? I mean, you can use a comparison to maybe the retail world, or when things are going on sale, what does that say about the strength of the brand? So these schools, again, will say in the short term, it's working. We're doing this because we want pricing to be more transparent. One of the big stats that is hard to believe is that something like 20% of kids actually pay full price across the U.S. There's a lot of aid. So what they're saying is, look, these prices don't need to be so high. We want to get real transparent pricing, and it is working on a marketing level. Like I said, are they doing it from a place of strength? I mean, Harvard, Penn, Dartmouth, these places are not cutting tuition. They're flooded with applications. Everybody still wants to go to the Ivies and are willing to pay.
Right. I mean, so for as much as people complain about university prices being too high, when they're lower than what people are used to, then they get a little bit suspicious as well. There's one school, Minerva University, which charges an all-in price of about $50,000. But it's different because the classes are online. It sounds like there's no physical infrastructure like classrooms or dining halls or libraries.
It's a really interesting school. They basically created a school from scratch, new model. They wanted to go at cost. They wanted to take out some of the things that drive up the cost. There's no, there's no fancy dorms. They don't have a lot of the frills that we think of at the elite private schools. And it's a $50K all-in price. We had the president in the office here talking to him. He said he actually thinks the price has hurt them because, they don't have great name recognition either. They're new. They're trying to sort of establish their brand, and people are looking at it just like we look at wine, food, anything else, and say, if it's more expensive, it's better. I mean, that's a very common thing, right? When we go shopping, we all think that. And what he's saying is that we did all this stuff to keep the price down, and it's hurting us in the marketplace because people think it's cheaper, it must be worse. So very interesting psychologically how you sort of appeal to families and students.
And I guess the big backdrop here as well is that there is a demographic cliff coming where a lot of these schools need to get ready, brace themselves for years in which there aren't enough students for the colleges that are out there.
That's right. I mean, there's been a lot of school closures across the U.S. Often these small religious schools are closing. These places in rural America that can't hold on anymore. State schools have done pretty well because of the value proposition. The elite schools continue to do well, but there's not enough students. Increasingly, young men are not going to college. There's some interesting numbers there. So as a business, higher education has an issue as far as the cost, getting people in the door. And this is a super interesting piece of that world as these schools try to navigate that.
I love the rationalizations. I think they're fantastic. Again, he sounds completely foolish. The jabs are never going to get brought up whatsoever. I think that was on Bloomberg TV or something like that. Either way, they're not going to get to the crux of the problem. The fact is that if name recognition is all you have, that's it. He openly admitted that. Some of these places still have the name recognition, like a Harvard, a Yale, a Dartmouth, a blah, blah, blah. What he doesn't know is that all of those schools are the butt of every single joke that goes on among the most knowledgeable and the most awake in the United States. Look what happened a year ago on college campuses. All the Jew-Palestinian hubbub and all that didn't make those schools look better. It made them look dumber than they already are. I've been over the articles on this show, too, of endless massive employers saying, if you have an Ivy League degree, you're retarded. And we don't want you here. We don't like the way you talk. We don't like the way you think. We don't like the way you dress. We don't like the color of your rainbow-colored hair. We don't like your nose piercings. Beat it. Beat it, crazy person. Hit the bricks. And then they're gone. They don't even consider their application in many cases when they have it from an Ivy League. Name recognition was always superficial, popularity, societal, accidental nonsense. Always has been. Still is today. It's even worse today. So why people fall for that is beyond me. I find it hilarious that he brings up an online university and goes, well, it doesn't have all the added costs. And well, it doesn't have the name recognition and not the, the stereotypical frills like, living in a dorm. I mean, what a nightmare. Showering next to strangers and living with strangers for numerous years on end and eating all the goy slop that exists in the cafeteria and being forced to be crammed in with a bunch of strange sick people on a constant basis. I mean, what a frill. What a luxury that must be. And you're listening to a guy who never lived in a dorm. Not once. I lived in an apartment my freshman year in college. I shouldn't have even done that. In retrospect, I should have either lived by myself in an apartment or I should have lived at home. I'll make that full admission. I lived by myself my last year in college, in an apartment. Loved it. I was the most productive. I managed my time the best. And I happened to be, outside of my freshman year, I happened to be the most academically successful at that time. Just as far as my own goals were concerned anyway, not comparing myself to anybody else. But of course, I was the most successful in graduate school in online environments. And it isn't because it's quote-unquote easier. It's because there's less distraction. There's no bread and circus nonsense. It's you, information, and exploring, which is what learning is. So he openly admitted online universities have less distraction, less noise, less nonsense, and it costs less. What's the problem then? Well, it's name recognition. There's no, there's no Harvard or Stanford associated with it, so it's worthless. Give me a break. It's the only way forward. Traditional brick and mortar schools are going to online because they have to, because they're bleeding enrollment and they're bleeding money. There's no other way forward for them. They have no choice. And if people are still, again, attending name recognition, quote unquote, I don't know, popularity contest nonsense schools with Ivy League names, they're wasting their time. And then, of course, they graduate, hang it on a wall, stick their chest out and say, look where I got my degree. And most people go, I don't care. Because it doesn't matter. We live in a different time. It's a different age. It's the Great Awakening. This is what's going on here. And too many people don't know this. Moving on here. And to wrap up very quickly, I'm going to kind of do a little lightning round, hopefully, given the length of this particular episode. But here we go. Fully vaccinated Fox News doctor Kelly Powers. Dr. Kelly Powers, who survived on-air heart attack, dies from turbo cancer. Now, I looked into this. She was most assuredly jabbed, but she was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2020 and was apparently receiving treatment then. But if you recall, in many hospitals, in order to receive treatment of any kind, certainly at that moment in history, you had to be COVID jabbed. And she was a TV doctor, which means her likelihood of being COVID jabbed at least twice was probably pretty high. So then she suffers a heart attack after receiving treatment for brain cancer. Her cancer apparently went into remission, and then it came back, and now she has since passed away. This happened just this past week. So, rest in peace, but again, this is the brainwashing and, again, the TV doctor mentality. Huge problem. And when they all listen to each other and they're all saying the same thing, someone's not thinking. There's also this. High school hockey player dropped dead on the ice during a charity event. High school hockey player drops dead mid-game after sudden medical event. This was from December 2nd. New York high school hockey players tragically died after suffering a sudden medical event in the middle of a game, leaving onlookers horrified. Connor Casson, 17 years old. And it was a charity event apparently for a fellow student who died in a car accident, if memory serves. Jabbed? We can assume. This next piece of audio has been making the rounds pretty well. Dr. Peter Hotez, if I'm saying his name correctly, this is the individual who, again, was allegedly linked with Anthony Fauci and gain-of-function research, which of course means increased transmissibility via electromagnetism from shot takers to other shot takers and shot takers to non-shot takers. And he was on MSNBC again running his mouth, and here's what he says about what's apparently coming. Rather specific timing and a rather specific date as well. Give him a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Here's the reason why we need to care about this stuff, Nicole, is that we have some big picture stuff coming down the pike starting on January 21st. Mr. Bloomberg mentioned H5N1. That I'm really worried about. It's all over wild birds on the western part of the United States and going up in the north. It's getting into the poultry. We're seeing sporadic human cases, no human-to-human transmission yet, but that could happen. It's in the cattle, it's in the milk, and that's just the beginning. We have another major coronavirus likely brewing in Asia. We've had SARS in 2002, SARS-2, COVID-19 in 2019. And we know these viruses are jumping from bats to people thousands of times a year. But there's still more. We know that we have a big problem with mosquito-transmitted viruses all along the Gulf Coast, where I am here in Texas. So we're expecting dengue and possibly Zika virus coming back, or a Puche virus, maybe even yellow fever. And there's more. Then we have all this sharp rise in vaccine preventable diseases going up because of, in part, the anti-vaccine activism that's so prominent right now. We have a 5-fold rise in pertussis cases, whooping cough over the last year, 15 measles outbreaks this year. We've got polio that's been in the wastewater in New York State. All that's going to come crashing down on January 21st on the Trump administration. We need a really, really good team to be able to handle this.
Well, he hit just about every single base, didn't he? Every single one. Bats are giving it to humans again. Mosquitoes everywhere. We're all going to die. Do you trust somebody who doesn't comb his hair? And he's wearing a bow tie, I might add. Remember what I've said about people who wear bow ties. Yes, I know it's a broad statement, but it still reigns true. Don't trust anybody who wears a bow tie. They think they're a little more important than everybody else. Can't trust a person with a bow tie, just saying. Anyway, I want them to bring something back. I want them to do it. I want the media to all get on the same page and bring the fraud back again. Please do it. I'm begging you. Do it. Bring back mask wearing. Bring back the hysteria. Shut the box stores and all the other stores and whatever stores you want. Shut them all down. Do it. All it's going to do is make everybody hate government more. It's going to cause more people to leave American public schools. Do it again, please. I want this to happen. I truly do. Unfortunately, there's going to be collateral damage as a result of this. There will be people who buy it. There will be people who will run to their doctors and take more shots, and that will happen. And again, if that's a proverbial thinning of the herd and natural selection, well, that's just one of the things that unfortunately comes with the territory. If you haven't learned by this point, there's something seriously wrong with you. But again, that's quite an admission, quite a direct admission. Just so happens to be the day again after the inauguration. But he's not guilty of anything. Again, this is it's been said a million times that psychopaths always leave clues and they want to get caught. He just told you what he wants to do and what these people want to do. Why would he say the 21st of January, 2025? That something's going to happen on that day that's going to cause all hell to break loose. Try it again. I'm telling you what, more Americans are awake now, on this issue anyway, than you can't possibly believe. And if this happens again and schools lose their minds again, they're finished. Yes, people will show up to school boards again and say, you didn't learn from the last time, you're doing this again, are you out of your minds? And there will be all of that. But hopefully somebody with some sense will say, just pull your children out permanently. Just do that. And stop coming back to these easily manipulative environments. And any environment that's easily manipulated by any of this. Stop going. If that's a restaurant, don't go there anymore. If it's a store, don't go there anymore. Business owners have got to learn. They might have a decision to make here in the future. It's going to get real interesting real quick. Okay, there was also this story. Again, this has been making the rounds for a number of weeks now. I don't think I brought it up in the past. Here was the particular study. It was titled, Circulating Microclots Are Structurally Associated with Neutrophil Extracellular Traps, and their amounts are strongly elevated in long COVID patients, quote unquote. Translation: the DNA contamination exists more in those who are jabbed. That's basically it. Again, that's sort of the layperson's translation of this, because there is no such thing as long COVID. So what they've basically said is, individuals who are still sick and are jabbed are seeing more of these clots and these forming microclots in numerous parts of the body, in numerous cells all across the body. It shouldn't necessarily shock anybody. But for the people writing these articles who think that long COVID or that COVID is actually a thing, it would be new to them, and it would confuse them and intrigue them and a number of other things. There, of course, was another study involving the business of chopping up colon cancer cells inside of a colon, specifically from, I believe, Kevin McKernan and his group and his research group. I even included a clip of him in the last war video, again talking about how there are multiple strains of DNA inside of these particular cancer-ridden colon cells, specifically of this particular patient who had died from receiving at least 4 Pfizer shots. And that, again, this business of, well, there's only one particular form of DNA inside of the Pfizer shots, and that's what you're receiving. The point is that nobody's supposed to be receiving DNA in any shot from anything ever. But they're finding at least 40 some odd different strains of DNA within these shots. No wonder people are dying. Their DNA is being infiltrated with foreign DNA. That's not supposed to happen. Unless, of course, 2 people get together and reproduce. That's the only time that DNA is really supposed to be swapped from person to person. It's not supposed to be injected into your bones, and it's not supposed to be injected into your bloodstream via a needle, or any other method for that matter, certainly from dead animals and dead fetuses and the like. So, again, shocking to some, I guess, but I'm not sure why. Because foreign DNA in a human body is going to kill healthy cells in a human body, thereby leading to cancer, thereby leading to endless other illnesses, and thereby killing them, potentially. So, there you go. Thus endeth the lesson for this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a long one. Thank you for listening. Hope you learned something. And I'll be back on Monday, God willing. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you then. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.